Welcome to the Photo Flunky Show, episode 133. Thank you very much for joining us on the Photo Flunky Show. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up Lightroom organization for success. Hi, welcome to the Photo Flunky Show. My name is William Beam.
Hi, my name is Lee Beam.
We help photographers become better visual storytellers so they can take better photos to share, sell, and remember. This week's show notes are going to be available at williambeam.com/episode 133. And we're going to be talking about setting up Lightroom organization so that you really understand what's going to work best for you. I mean, how many folders do you really need? I mean, how many catalogs do you need? And really the most important question is, do you trust Lightroom? And you can tell that Lee and I are probably going to have different answers on this, but that's part of the fun. And the reason I'm doing this episode is I recently saw a video on YouTube from Jared Poland from Frono's Photo, and he was asking the question about setting up his new computer and how he's going to set up his Lightroom. And he was showing all these folders, that he used to have date-based. And then he was asking, like, do I do one catalog? Do I do many catalogs? And then he kind of narrowed it down to how many folders he had. And I'm not ragging on Jared. I like Jared Poland very much. I think he's a great photographer. He's a great presenter of information. But I also like the topic because this is something that a lot of people really struggle with. And some people do things that I think are absolutely a waste of time.
Yep.
But I thought it would be a good topic for us to go through here. So Lee and I have talked about importing photos, and we start off very differently. So one of the things that Lee makes sure is she doesn't import anything that she doesn't want to use.
Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff I know right off the bat I'm not going to use. And I remove it, or I remove it from the selection, or I just don't select it.
So let's start off with really a basic thing is like, where do you import your photos into Lightroom? In other words, there has to be a structure someplace, and I use a Mac, she uses Windows. I'm putting mine under the pictures folder for my home directory in a folder called Lightroom. And how many folders underneath that do you have? Where do you keep your Lightroom folder? And how many folders underneath that do you have?
I think mine just goes into the same place. It's under the pictures.
On Windows. So you got
on Windows, yeah.
Whatever the pictures photos.
I think that is the way. Yeah, I think that is actually the way it's set up by default, unless you change it. I remember on my other laptop, the previous one I was using, which still functions, I had actually moved it on to a different drive, so it automatically went to a different drive. It didn't, just because of space. I
think that's an important point. It does not have to be on your home drive or your internal drive. In my case, I have an external RAID array with 16 terabytes, and I've moved my home folder over there. And the reason I did that is simply for convenience. So if I click on pictures, then I know everything's there, but it's not on my internal drive. It's on that external drive that has a lot of space.
That's what I did as well previously.
So this can be on any drive that you want it to be. It does not have to be in a pictures folder. Your folder doesn't have to be called Lightroom. Those are kind of obvious things, like my pictures are here and Lightroom is underneath my pictures. So that's why I think a lot of people really do go with that. So once you've got your Lightroom folder, do you have multiple folders underneath it?
I don't know. I never use them. If it creates stuff by itself, then they probably
But you didn't set up a structure like this. These are all my 2018, 2017, and then underneath them, different months or dates.
Oh, hell no.
A lot of people do that, and they're quite proud of it. And honestly, I don't get the reasoning why that.
Your camera records the date.
Your camera records the date, and Lightroom reads that. So long as you keep the date on your camera correct.
Well, mine's not, but I know how much to subtract from or add on.
You know what? If that works for you, I'm not that smart. I make sure that the camera has the right date and time on it.
The point is, it's all in sequence unless you reset the date in your camera.
I think the reason why people create all these folders is because they do not trust Lightroom to manage.
No, I didn't think so.
And that's really what it is. It's like it's a fear. Well, and let's be fair. One day, Lightroom is not going to be the tool that we use.
That's fine. I think the vast majority of people who create it this way do it this way because the big names on YouTube who are doing it, who are probably doing photography in volume in a whole new realm, are telling them that that's what they have to do. I mean, I remember going through tutorials by photographers I still very much admire and respect. They are very good at what they do. They're very organized, but my workflow was nothing like theirs. It was just absolutely unnecessary hassle to me.
I'm going to tell you how mine is, and I would not do it the same way today. My advice for today, just in case you're wondering, is underneath your pictures or whatever folder you want to use as your root. I put my Lightroom folder. All of my photos would go into that folder with no subfolders. I currently have subfolders from when I migrated things over from Aperture, which I was using before, and I had different databases. Aperture worked differently than Lightroom did in that case. And I made one for portraits. I made one for travel. I made one for events, another for food or product photography, things of that nature. I really don't need those because Lightroom can manage all of that with either collections or keywords or even renaming the photos.
I use keywords. That's all.
That's what I use as well too. And that's my recommendation. I'm really not a fan of collections. I've got an article I'll put in the show notes of why you should never use collections again. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, collections gets to be a big cluttered mess, just like folders do. And that's not the best way to find your photos.
Yeah, I really just do keywords, but also I don't send my stuff to back itself up on a catalog or in a whatever else other options they've got. The way that I work, I only keep the stuff that I'm going to use. Once I've finished processing it, that is what I'm happy with and what I'm going to keep. I don't have a need for the original file anymore. So
no, you keep.
I'm done.
For example, if you keep something that's a JPEG, that's your finished file. You keep that and you'll throw away the raw file.
I do. And also, like, for example, the only thing I might do is if I think that I might need something in a different format, you know, if it needs to be cropped, I might do something square. Then what I'd do is I'd go into under the photo menu where you create a virtual copy, and I'll take the same photo and I'll crop it differently for different things and export them as, you know, with a 16:9, 1:1, and whatever it is. But that is all, literally, that is all I do. So the only thing is that I might have the same photo 3 times with a different suffix, which would depict the type of crop it has.
I think there are some people that are absolutely freaking out about the idea of just throwing all of their photos into one folder and letting Lightroom manage it. But really, that's what Lightroom is for. You don't want to have to go through your Finder to manage your photos, because then you end up with an endless array of folders and subfolders. And that may tell you the date when you shot it, or it may tell you the category, in my case, you know, with whether they're portraits or events. But what happens if you've got a photo that you can use in more than one way? You can't really do anything with that to organize it in the Finder.
I have never ever searched for a photo in Lightroom. If you asked me to go and do it now, I wouldn't know how to do it.
How would you find your photos in Lightroom?
I don't need to find them in Lightroom.
Then why are they in Lightroom?
They're there because Lightroom doesn't delete them when you finish processing. Whatever it does with them, if they happen to be there, that's because some default setting was there. I don't look at them. I'm not interested in what's there. I don't back up my catalogs or whatever. You know, when it asks you want to back up? No, it's always no thanks. When I'm done with the pictures, I export them, and that's where they go into folders. They've also got their tags in it. They've been named. They've got a prefix for certain things. It's a system that all makes sense to me. But I kind of work, it's like airport codes. I know what goes where by what the first 3 letters are, and that's my prefix to my photos.
But for you, the photos are really temporary. You use them for the moment that you have, and then once you're done with them, you're done.
I am done. And I mean, I've got family photos and vacation photos, but they kind of, it's not that I'm done with them, but I'm done with processing them.
Do you ever want to go back and print or look at those photos for family and vacation?
I do, but I look at them wherever I've saved them. Not in Lightroom.
I'm beginning to wonder why you have Lightroom.
Because that's where I do my retouching. I use Lightroom every single day.
Yes, you do.
Every day.
But that's really it. It is there as a processing and development engine and not an organizational engine.
That's right. And I enjoy it. It's worth it to me because I get a lot of benefit and value out of it. Also, I like to take a photo with my phone. Like what I've got now is like with my iPhone, it uploads the photos into Lightroom when I take the photo with my phone camera. Mm-hmm. So I can go in there and it goes into my synced albums. So if I need to work on something on the computer, then I can go and access it from there. That's the benefit instead of emailing it to myself, except when Lightroom makes changes and updates and then stuff doesn't sync anymore. It works for me because it's convenient. It's a one-step easy way to do it. And I've got this refined. Now, look, I'm not doing fancy special photos. My stuff, social media, it's a photo or 2 or maybe 3 even in a day. I need to be in and out in a minute.
Yeah. And you do a lot more photography than I do for those specific things. I mean, you're doing something daily, but you're not using it anywhere near the same way that I told you at the beginning of the show that we were going to have different ideas on this.
Yeah, but look at your photos and look at mine. Mine are, they're not photos that people are going to keep going back to look at them and remember. My photos are actually a visual to go with a story.
Yeah.
And people like visuals. That's why they're there. I'm also kind of picky that I don't want blurry photos. I don't want underexposed or badly exposed or badly composed photos. I've got my little standards for this stuff, but it is also what it is. I mean, these are snapshots to go with the story.
That's something that I think a lot of people ought to think about is, are you going to go back to these photos? Because I remember, there are times that you'll go through, take a lot of photos, import them into Lightroom. You'll select a few that you like. You'll process those in the develop module, and then you will never, ever look at those other photos again. They're just taking up space forever. And I've got a lot of those as well, too. So I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just simply saying that one of the things I like about yours is you can manage it on a laptop and you don't need a lot of space in order to do it.
No, I really don't.
But for the rest of us who need some kind of organization, this is why I'm recommending letting Lightroom take care of it, because it'll read metadata out of your photo and it will know what lens, what camera you used, what the date and time was if you set that correctly. It'll pick a date and time. It may not be the one you set. But if you keep your camera up to date, you can find anything. And then when you import them, this is where the keywords kind of come in for me. And that's where I want to say, is this a portrait photo? Is this something that if I have a specific model or subject, for example, our most recent photo shoot was with a bodybuilder named Kat. So I named, I've got a keyword with her name that goes with all those photos. So every time I need to find something, I can just simply go up to the search bar, type in Kat, with a K, and then I'm getting the photos that I need of her. And I can further filter that down, whether it's got a flag with it, whether I've got a star rating or a color code.
Yeah.
And I can find the photos that I need very quickly. In order to do that, the other question was, how many catalogs do you need? And I'm of the mind that really you only need one catalog unless you've got a specific client reason to have a multiple catalog environment. And the thought was in the past that if you had one catalog and put a lot of photos in there, it would start slowing down. Years ago, Adobe would say that they'd see some slowdown around 500,000 photos. These days, they see 2 million photos without any performance degradation. For most of us that are taking photos and doing our work, whether it is, unless it's like a really commercial shop where you've got so much stuff in there, you're not going to come anywhere near 2 million photos.
No.
So one catalog is sufficient. The problem with multiple catalogs is, again, the same problem that you have with a Finder. What if you've got a photo that really fits in more than one genre? It's in this catalog or it's in that catalog. Same thing with your folders. It's in this folder or it's in that folder. If you have them in one catalog and you use different keywords, this same photo might be a portrait and a landscape.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a portrait and a wedding. It might be, a color, a mood, whatever you use for your keywords. Those are things that you can't do really very well with folders and different catalogs, because there you have to pick one idea or concept behind it.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely down with just using one Lightroom catalog. This is kind of where I really didn't want to get into the new Lightroom CC versus the Lightroom Classic CC thing. But I got to admit, I'm enjoying the fact that you can sync up between these things. So if I'm on the go, if I'm on my laptop instead of on, my primary desktop computer, or if I'm on my phone, those photos that I've synced are right there and I can do something with them even if I'm away from home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I see as an advantage for having just one catalog and multiple devices. All right, Lee, you mentioned that you can do something on your mobile phone and sync it up. I mean, what is your workflow with this?
I take a photo with my iPhone camera. I do not go into the camera in Lightroom. The camera in Lightroom I find is too fiddly. I really just want to snap a shot. You've got a lot more versatility with the camera in Lightroom. That's also a bit of a time waster for me. I have learned to just make sure that my light is correct and that there's no fogging or condensation on my lens, which is something I had this morning, and take the photo, and then it syncs straight into into my little Lightroom app. And this is simply for a speed thing, not because the Lightroom camera capabilities are inferior in any way. In fact, it's the complete opposite, but I just don't want to be messing with it. So once that photo is in Lightroom, I take the photo, I open up Lightroom on the phone, the Lightroom mobile app. What's it called? I don't know.
It's just Lightroom CC.
Okay, so that's the CC one. I've got some basic touching I do. Usually there's a little bit of exposure adjustment, a little bit of sharpening. Usually white balance needs a little bit of help because I'm early in the morning, so there is lens on the camera seems to pick up a lot of the warm tones, maybe a little bit more than what I'd like. So I usually kind of hit down a little bit to the blues. Yeah, it's just little sliders. That's it. And then I crop.
But you're doing that all on the phone. But when you go back to your desktop, you've got your photo there.
I've got my photo there. So I can go in there and I can hit that photo. And if it, for example, if it's been cropped, when I hit on it in the little synced album, I can, I don't want to say uncrop it, but I can adjust the crop to something different, and the original is still there, which is nice. Because I'm at the point where I want to delete the original photos from my iPhone. I've just got so many on there, and I just want the finished photos on. And that's because iPhone makes these little, what do they call it, memories or something?
Oh, yeah.
And it will always pick the ugly, unprocessed photos that you forgot to delete. So
you can change that. You can make your own memories on that, but you got to know it still does something automatically that kind of throws you off.
It just, anyways, for me, it's time. Everything I have so much on the go right now that to me there is such a big difference between spending 3 minutes and spending 1 minute on something. I don't want to compromise on the quality, so I've just found a workflow that works for me. I understand this is on an extreme end. This is not the average, but between the extremes, usually everybody can find.
Well, your end result is going to be a photo with some kind of graphics on it, like you said, for a social media message, or and you've also got your product photos that you're doing. So some of that is with your DSLR. The social media ones are primarily with your iPhone. Let's say the ones you do on your iPhone, you process the photo on the iPhone, it syncs up, you go back to your desktop, and then you're going to do some work with Canva, and you're going to pull that photo out and do some other work.
I'm actually just using Canva on the phone. And the reason that I'm using, I'm cropping in Lightroom on Lightroom mobile, Lightroom whatever right now on the phone, is because I do them for Instagram, which means a square crop. The Canva app on the phone is not that great. In other words, if you have a photo that is not square, it will crop it square for you, or it will distort it terribly, but it will fit it into that box, unlike where you can do other things to it on the desktop. So I actually have to crop the photo, and then what I might do is I'll export the photo. If I want to use it in two places, I'll export the photo, like save to my camera roll. Once I'm finished with it as it is, then crop and save it again to the camera roll so that I've got the square crop.
But you're not saving that in Lightroom at all.
No,
man.
I don't need these are iPhone shots. Look, I've got the ones that I take on my DSLR. Generally, I've pulled out the big camera because they are, I guess it's fair to say, they're more important to me.
Well, so, some of those you're into using lighting now. Some of them you've got very different setups and scenes that you're creating for the product photography. Mm-hmm. So those you still have a card, so you can't do that mobile. You have to come back and bring that back, and you import the card. You look on Lightroom, but you're still looking at the thumbnails to pick your winners.
Yeah, and I want the finer level of control over those. So obviously I do not want to work on my phone with those anyway, even if I could. But yes, and I don't save them in Lightroom because I work on them in Lightroom until I'm as happy as I can possibly be. And then
you've got to import them into Lightroom to work on them.
I do, but then what I'm saying is then I export them. I'm not putting them anywhere. I mean, if Lightroom wants to do something with it, that's fine. I don't care. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. I've never had to or wanted to or tried to go back and look for something in Lightroom.
I find that just fascinating and frightening at the same time.
Well, it just means when I've processed it, I've done as good a job as I believe I can. So in other words, I've done a great job and I'm happy, and I'm either going to use it or not, because if I'm not happy, I don't export it.
Yeah.
So if I export it, I'm happy enough that I'm going to use it. That's the image that I need.
And then once you've exported it, you don't take the finished one with the Canva stuff on it and put it back into Lightroom at all.
No, I've never actually thought about doing that. Why?
Man, I save everything. I have got tons and tons of stuff that I've created, and I put it back into Lightroom just because, let's say for the website, if I lose my header image, because it's a computer, something can go wrong. Occasionally I've had photos that were inserted on a blog post that just got screwed up and I needed to go back and re-upload it. If I don't have the finished result that I had before, I can't fix that. When I'm looking in Lightroom and trying to decide how I'm going to organize things, really, there are times when a collection is the right answer, even though I despise them and I advise people, for the most part, ignore collections. And that would be, for example, if I'm shooting tethered, you can only shoot tethered and bring it into a target collection. You can't just say, okay, tag it with this and I'll look at that later on in a smart collection. It's got to go to a specific collection to be targeted. When you're shooting tethered, it's not writing to your card. It's writing directly into Lightroom. So you need to be able to do what you want to do with that collection or the photos in that collection. And that's typically when I will go back and pick the ones that I want. I can delete the stuff, where the flash didn't fire. I've made some obvious mistake. I'm never going to use those photos again. But that's when I hit them with the keywords. That's when I go back and rename all the photos through Lightroom. So that way I don't want to have, WRB or DSC 06173.nef as my file. That doesn't tell me a thing. But if I'm shooting with cat, I might just go rename them all to cat-1-2-3.
Yep, the sequence. I like that. Yep.
The sequences, I think, work very, very well. I don't need dates in there. I don't need anything else. I just need something that tells me that these photos went with this subject or this purpose of the photo shoot, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Could be fireworks, could be landscape, could be travel, whatever it is. Maybe if I'm going to Las Vegas one time a year, and I've been there multiple times, I might put down, Vegas 2018-1-2.
See, with vacation photos, I actually put the date into the tag.
And I do that as well too, but I don't need to put it in the tag. And it's one of those little creepy things, and it goes back to, do you trust Lightroom? I've got the date associated with a photo. It's already in the metadata. Same as with what aperture and shutter speed I've shot with, what camera and lens. It's right there. I don't need to tag it with that, but yet sometimes I will still put up a tag that says 2018 or whatever.
I tag it with that because when you export a photo and you're looking at it on your whatever, like in my case, my external drive, I've noticed that it assigns the date, not the date that you took it, but the date that you exported it. What? So yeah. Anyway, so I put the tag into the date. It's not for Lightroom. Actually, I don't have a problem trusting Lightroom. I've been using Lightroom for a long time. I just don't use it for that purpose. I have no concerns about, I've never had Lightroom lose or ditch photos. I just haven't used it to keep them. So this isn't a trust thing. It's just that the reason I put the date as a tag is because I still haven't gotten around to putting the right date into my camera.
Well, that I understand now.
Okay. And it's just, I never think to do it before I take the photos. I always think about it when I get to the tags and think, I really need to change the date on my camera. And we're sitting years later and I haven't done it.
I'm going to do this before our next trip.
You should. I've just got into the habit of putting the tags in there because when I go into wherever I've saved the photos on my hard drive or external drive or wherever it is, if it's in the tag there, it's easier for me to find if I'm looking for something date specific.
See, I'm all about the metadata that's in the photo and within Lightroom. I definitely need to add tags for things that, describe what's in the photo. But I also trust that when I take a photo with my camera, it's going to record not only the date, the lens, the camera model, all the exposure details. And I can search on all those things. If I want to see what photos have I taken with my 24 millimeter prime, that's a very quick and easy search. The only thing that I need to add is stuff that's really descriptive about the subject inside the photograph. And I found that that's easy to do. And then if I need to work with a collection of photos that way, I don't create a collection and then do a search and drag them all over. I've got a smart collection and it's there when I need it. And then when I'm done, I can delete the smart collection. So I don't have a big, long list of collections coming down. Yeah,
that's what bugs me. Because when you're trying to find something, and even if it's not a collection, you've got this whole list of stuff. You have to sift through it, like scroll down before you get to the next panel. I hate that.
I do too. And I know you can do collection sets. So in other words, you can have a main topic and then you can do different collections underneath them. That is helpful. But generally I found I don't really need collections except for the very few specific things that Lightroom requires a collection. And everything else is a matter of keywords and then smart collections as I need them. One of the things that bothered me in the past was that I could not sync a smart collection, but our friend TJ Powell mentioned on a previous episode, he responded back to us with a plugin that will let you, sync a smart collection. I thought, that's great. Now I can just get rid of some of these other collections. So, and that way, as I add more photos that fit the criteria, I don't have to remember, oh yeah, I need to drag that over to the collection. It happens automatically. Smart collections are definitely the way to go. So long as you've got the right metadata or keywords associated with the photo.
I've got one smart collection.
Well, why?
You made it, you put it there because you said to me, how can you work like this? So you said, and I said, I don't know how to do it. And you said, I'll do it for you. That's why I've got one.
That's why you've got one.
But I do have one.
I was going to say, I'm so proud of you. Then when you told me that I created it, I thought, well, now I'm proud of me.
You should be proud of me because I said, yes, please do it.
Yes. And I'm happy that you have it and I'm hopeful that you use it.
I don't remember what's in there.
All right. So as we said, we wanted to kind of talk about how to set up Lightroom organization for success. I'm going to advise that you just ignore everything that Lee said.
That's quite rude,
I know
actually.
It is. You know what? I am impressed by the way that you use Lightroom, not because it would work for me, but because you look at it and you thought, I don't need to do all this stuff that people tell us that we have to do. And it does exactly what you want to do.
I do the stuff that works for me. I also want to I agree with you, though, that my way of doing it is on an extreme end. The way that I use Lightroom is not the norm.
It's not the norm,
So
but I
this
think
is-
there are a lot of normal people that could actually do what you do because they're not trying to work for clients. They're not trying to work for fine art. They're not trying to work for anything that requires them to do more than take the picture, process it, and then export it to use somewhere.
I just don't want people to think that I'm saying it's stupid to put in the extra work. It's just for my needs. It's completely unnecessary, and I'm big on I don't have time, so I try not waste it.
I'm fascinated by your approach. It would not work for me. And
No, it wouldn't.
And I need to go back and reuse photos from time to time. I've sold the same photo from time to time and had to do different edits or processing on it in order to satisfy the client.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
needed it.
selling photos, but then I'm taking photos with my iPhone.
You know, people sell photos from their iPhone. It doesn't matter what camera you have, as long as the result is there. You have product shots from your iPhone that people, you know, the businesses that hired, you know, full production crews to create are saying, wow, your stuff's better than ours. I mean, seriously. Because you know I'm right. You've told them before, this is just an iPhone shot.
I know,
and you
but
always
I gave
say
it to
just an
them.
iPhone shot.
I gave them the photos because I felt so bad that they thought that I had spent money doing it. Because that was kind of what they asked.
But you know what? That's why I come back and say it really does not matter what camera you have. You can get good results. You may need some special hardware on occasion to get a specific technique or shot. But that does not mean that you cannot get great shots with anything from your iPhone to a point and shoot up to a big DSLR or a medium format camera. There's a lot of stuff that really is more about the creativity of the person taking the photo rather than what gear you have.
That's true.
I'm just impressed with you have a very unique way of doing it. And as I said before, it's not something I'm going to recommend to anybody else.
Look, I'm not either.
But my thought is when you're going to, let's just kind of recap, you know, it's like, I'm really an advocate of importing your photos into one folder, have one Lightroom catalog and let it manage those photos, describe them with keywords. And then you can find your photos with metadata searches. You can do smart catalogs, and that is a simple, easy way to go. I do recommend, you know, running when I quit Lightroom, I've got it set to automatically optimize and back up my catalog. I got to go back and delete some of those backups because they'll build up some size after a while, and you don't necessarily need that. But most of us that need to rely upon organizing your Lightroom photos need to make sure that catalog is safe and protected. So that's why I think the backup and optimize step is very important. But for the rest of this stuff, I don't think you need lists and lists of collections. I don't think you need all these long folders underneath because that does not matter to Lightroom at all.
No, that's true. I'm also one of those people where if I don't need something, I don't look at it. And then when I figure it out, maybe things change because your workflow changes, your needs change, and you look at it and think, oh, that's so cool. I didn't know it could do that. That's just totally me. And then you'll tell me it's been there for years. So, okay, show me how to use it. But I'm okay because
you've got a specific workflow and it works for you.
I haven't lost anything. We're doing fine.
And I'm giving you my tips and advice. I'm telling you what Lightroom needs and the easiest way to do it. You can go through a lot of different folders. As a matter of fact, I want to put in the show notes a link to the video that Jared Poland made for that kind of brought up this discussion that we were going through. And so you can have a chance to see what he's doing. I left a comment on there because he did invite comments. And I said, honestly, I don't think you need all those folders. It doesn't hurt him to have them. But I don't think you need all that. And I don't think people need to stress over the optimal folder strategy if they're going to be using Lightroom. My advice really is just trust Lightroom to do the job that you bought it to do. Thank you so much. We really hope you enjoyed this show. And if you've got some questions or comments, please leave them at williambeam.com/episode 133. That's where we're going to put our show notes. And of course, we would love it if you would subscribe to the Photo Flunky Show on iTunes. You can find that directly at williambeam.com/iTunes. Or if you're listening on your player right now, just go ahead and hit the button to subscribe. There are also links to subscribe to other places like Google Play and Stitcher at photoflunky.com. Thank you very much. And also, I don't want to forget this one. If you've got Lightroom Classic and you want to make sure it's performing at its peak and optimum, I've got a guide for you. It's at williambeam.com/LR-hacks. It's called Lightroom Classic Performance Hacks. Check it out. It's free. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you again next week.